Hello candidates, how are you doing tonight?
Good. Awesome.
Alrighty. I'm going to go ahead and explain the rules for everyone tonight. And also, I want to add to that as well, anybody who's interested in asking some questions to the candidates themselves, be free to post a question on Facebook or Twitter with the hashtag #WooReviewDebate and address it to whichever candidate you're asking for a chance for us to ask it in real time tonight. All right, candidates, the rules for tonight. We have 2 minutes for an answer to an initial question, 1 minute for a follow-up question, 1 minute response if your name is mentioned, 3 unprompted responses for duration of debate where your party can respond after opponent answers an initial question by raising your hand and saying you'd like to use an unprompted response. Use this only when you are not mentioned in the opponent's initial statement. You have 1 minute for that response. For questions addressed to both parties, each candidate gets 2 minutes to answer, and you can defer to your running mate. At the end of the debate, the vice president and president of each party can ask the other party 1 question. The opponent will be given 2 minutes to respond. You have a time limit of 2 minutes for your closing statements as well. At this point, I'd like both candidates to give their introduction. You will split a time limit of 2 minutes between the two of you, both ways. We'll begin with candidate Vice President Mikkelsen and Senator Rodriguez.
Hello everyone, like you said, I'm Malcolm Mikkelsen. I'm the current Vice President of Student Government.
I'm Nikki Rodriguez. I'm the current chair of the Campus Affairs Committee for WSGA.
Please forgive us while we overcome the awkwardness of a corded microphone up here. So I'm really excited to be up here. I've worked a lot, not just with student government, but over the past year I've worked as a student ambassador as well with the honors program. In student government, I've gotten to work on a lot of really important issues over the last year, and those range from the smoking policy here on campus, as well as bringing back the iConnect program, which was a program that kind of fell by the wayside, along with working to address student needs on planners. I'm going to let Nikki kind of talk about what else she's involved in, as well as what she's been working on.
So I am a junior political science and Spanish major. I'm on the mock trial team, and I'm also involved in the honors program. Over the past year in the Campus Affairs Committee, I've had the opportunity to work on issues like sexual assault on campus, as well as lighting and other issues like that.
Thank you.
Mr. Van Dam, Senator Martinez, you may go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, I'm Natasha Martinez, and I am the Vice Chair of Student Engagement, and I'm running for WSGA President.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jack Van Dam. I'm a junior political science major. I'm running for WSGA Vice President.
So as you can see, we could not be more excited to be quite the team. And so one of the things that's really important to us is making sure that our students are really engaged in what's going on. And so by being involved in a lot of different organizations, that is really beneficial. So I'm an Alpha Phi, really involved in the Leadership Institute. I'm also a summer orientation counselor. I've been in Alpha Lambda Delta. I've been on the Marching Blues. I've just been in a lot of student organizations that bring a lot of perspective to me as a whole.
Over the past year and a half, I've had the honor to serve as a resident assistant in the LLC, and I'm also serve on resident assistant council in Washburn, residential council, and residential living. I'm also involved in the Leadership Institute as the communications student director. I was a summer orientation counselor this past year. So like both of us, we're super involved on campus and really just love talking to students, and we can't be more excited to be up here tonight. So thank you all.
Thank you, candidates. Before we begin our questions, I would like to let you both know all questions are sourced from your current statements that you've made in your platform videos, and any previous policies and statistics that we source are from the Washburn Review and WSGA itself. With that, I'd like to hand the mic over to my assistant moderator, Damian, to begin our first question.
This question is for Senator Martinez. Senator Martinez, you focus a lot of your platform on making clear that this is about what students want. But what do you specifically want to see done or changed? Or will you just listen to the majority of students regardless of the issue?
So one of the things that is really important is that we're listening to students. So Jack and I run a lot on voice and getting students engaged. And so there's a lot of issues that are going to come about in this next administration. We understand that the smoking policy will be something that will continue the efforts and see what's going on with that. We understand that the gun policy or ideas with the guns on campus will be really important in our administration. But we also understand getting students engaged is one of the most important things that we can do through our administration. So that is why we run on the idea of making sure that students are engaged and have policies that make students engaged and have the opportunity to be a part of what we're doing at WSGA to make the change. So listening to students is what we're about. So we are students that are serving for students. So as WSGA president, I want to make sure that that's happening and that we're listening to what's being told to us and listening to the concerns of our students. So whether that be through the campus safety concerns that we've already seen, as well as just concerns with a lot of things going on campus, we're going to listen to students because that's really important in this administration.
And I have a follow-up for that. How can you ensure students with clear convictions know they can stand by you if you haven't voiced your clear stance?
Can you restate that? Sorry.
Yes. How can you ensure that students with clear convictions and clear opinions on certain issues know that they can stand by you on certain stances if you haven't voiced your stance?
Yeah, so one of the things that's really important to us is making sure that students can stand by us because we're talking to them, we're engaging what they're saying, and we're listening to what students have to say. So most importantly, when we're making opinions, that we're listening to the students. And so when we're getting engaged with them, we're having those conversations where they feel comfortable relying on us that at the end of the day, we've listened to so many students that we're able to make an educated decision on what's going on.
And to follow up that, so just to clarify, you have no current stand at this point in regards to the issues?
So we do have current stances on a lot of in regards to the issues. Specifically, what issues are you talking about?
In general.
So specifically, we have a lot of stances on issues, but I think what the most important thing is that we're listening to students when we have when they do have concerns. So a lot of the things that are happening with campus safety, we see as something that's concerning to students. So students have came to us and said, there's not very much lighting on campus. So one of the things that we've already done is have those conversations with Captain Enos to make sure that we're figuring out what we can do with the lighting and how we can make students feel more safe.
Thank you.
This next question is for Senator Rodriguez. Senator Rodriguez, part of your platform is getting and keeping students engaged at Washburn. How do you plan to reach students who are not already engaged?
Well, this is something that I think the current administration has done a great job of trying to address over the past year. They have worked with the liaison program in WSGA Senate. So the liaison program assigns a senator to a specific organization. This is something that WSGA has had for a while, but it hasn't always been thoroughly carried out by the Senate. So this is something that the current administration has done this year, and something that I think we can improve on a lot over our administration. So to have a senator being connected with an organization, telling them about funding policies and helping them if they have any concerns about how to get funding or anything else that's going on in Senate. I think that's a great way to get students who don't really know that much about Senate more involved.
Thank you, Senator.
This next question is for Mr. Brenden. Mr. Brenden, you mentioned creating student advisory committees in your campaign and allowing students not in student government to directly participate in WSGA meetings. Considering the general public is already allowed to attend both WSGA committee meetings, what is the point of allowing students into spaces that they're already invited to, and what power would they be giving in this decision making?
Yeah, I mean, so just like from just sitting in on the last couple of Senate meetings, like a lot of students currently aren't attending the Senate meetings. So, and what we want to do under administration is try to just make WSGA even like more visible and get more students involved in that way. So we think by just making it clear to students that student advisory committees are a possibility, and I want to address your question of like what would their power be, just to be an additional voice in the room, being able to voice their opinions, because we totally think that the more people in the room being part of that decision-making process, the better off everyone will be.
And just as a follow-up, how do you plan to motivate students to attend these meetings if we're already having a hard enough time getting senators there?
For sure. So one thing that we really want to do is work with the Brew Review and send out like a weekly newsletter. So a newsletter that covers what we talked about in WSGA, like the current week, and also touching on what we're going to discuss the following week. So if students see anything that they're super passionate about or super against, like a policy that we were talking about, students can totally come to the meetings. And we also just really want to just get out on campus as much as possible. Natasha and I both live on campus. We've lived on campus our whole entire time here at Washburn. So definitely try to be out and about with our students and just constantly just trying to ask our students, hey, how can we help you and improve your experience here at Washburn?
Thank you.
This next question will be for Vice President Mikkelsen. In your Can Emporia incentive plan, you explained the first 5 student organizations to raise a certain amount of cans would receive monetary rewards. Do you believe this is fair considering the size differences in organizations, specifically fraternities and sororities compared to others?
So I think the important part of this is we want to expand this to multiple things. So it wouldn't just be based off the current model. The Can Emporia incentive program that we rolled out this year was the very first time we had ever tried this. So obviously, as you pointed out, there are flaws, especially with the sizes. We were happy to see that student organizations did in fact compete with Greek organizations in there. But applying to something like homecoming, we would look at to give rewards as far as student funding to the activity of their choice, which means we're screening activities, we're not just giving them cash. But we're looking to add these for people who can get the most homecoming points, the people who get most involved in homecoming, whether it be winning Yell Like Hell or winning the overall homecoming awards. So I think taking those ideas and really making them more specialized and building on the things we saw that worked this year, as well as the things that did not work this year, is what we really need to do for our incentive-based programs.
Thank you.
Senator Martinez, you mentioned introducing Say Anything boxes that would allow students to write and anonymously submit questions into boxes around campus. Do you have any plan to ensure the questions submitted are serious and appropriate and to keep the concept from being made light of?
Yeah, so actually we've already had a lot of conversations with this with some administration here on campus to see how these would actually work out. And they have had really positive impact in what the faculty thinks that we could get out of this. And so I think that what we can see is that students will be able to have this as a resource. So I think there will be some flaws in these, and we've already looked at what we are going to do logically to make sure that we see that students are taking them seriously. But also what we can see is that if a few students are able to be impacted by these Say Anything boxes, then that is a really good option for our students. So if students are able to say something that they normally wouldn't be able to say to someone else, we are going to impact their experience here at Washburn. And if we can do that, if we can avoid someone making a joke out of it every now and then, but those suggestions or ideas or Say Anything options is something that we should give a lot of students, because some students don't feel comfortable talking about some of these situations with someone in person. So if we're giving that option to even just a few students, then that's a great opportunity for our students.
Thank you, Senator. And as a follow-up to that, what would you do with those suggestions?
Yeah, so what we would do with those suggestions, depending on at what case where they stand, is what we want to make sure. We want to make sure that those suggestions are not just taken as suggestions, but instead that we're doing something about those suggestions. So if students don't feel safe here on our campus for some reason, and they specifically give that in there, that we're having the conversation with who we need to have the conversation with, and that we're doing something about these, whatever the concerns are, that we're doing something about them. That's why we've already had conversations with different people who it would concern as well.
Thank you, Senator.
Did you have something?
Yeah. So if you're given hundreds of these anonymous notes, how are you going to prioritize which ones you address and which ones you don't?
Yeah, so what we would do is we'd pick them up on a weekly basis, but what we've also looked at is some sort of electronic format that students could submit them in, instead of just submitting them in that Say Anything box, that they could submit it online, and so we'd get them a lot quicker to turn around as well. But we would make sure that we're prioritizing, if there's something that's really, really concerning, that we're going through all of them. That's not a problem, that we're going through all of them, but what we're making sure happens here is that we're getting the concerns that are really an at-risk to our students, that's being talked about.
Can I have one of the unscripted responses?
Go ahead with your unprompted response.
So you mentioned electronic format, and I'm wondering really how this differs from the suggestion box we already offer on the front page of mywsga.com, and how really we're giving them the opportunity right now. So I'm just kind of wondering how it differs from what we're currently doing.
Yeah, so what we're currently doing, I don't know how often it's been talked about. And so one of the things that we really want to make sure is happening is that students know about it because there's something on our campus that shows them that that's happening. So what we see is that some students aren't utilizing, a lot of students aren't utilizing that, or at least I don't think very many students know that that's being utilized. And so these say anything boxes would be distributed throughout campus, and there would still be a way for them to submit it right away, as soon as possible, paper format, but there would also be that electronic way as well. So that's just another option that we've looked at. We've obviously talked about this with a lot of people here on our campus to make sure that this is even something that's logical, and I think that what we found is that this could be a really positive option for our students, and we've already looked at models at other schools that are very similar to ours as well.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Vice President Mikkelsen. This next question is for Mr. Van Dam. Mr. Van Dam, you mentioned that the United States Constitution is 8 or 9 pages and question why the WSGA Constitution needs to be near 55 pages long. The WSGA Constitution itself is 5 pages, although there are additional pages of bylaws. Are you advocating getting rid of the bylaws in order to condense the governing documents?
So something that we've seen when we've ran over the last couple of weeks is just, when I said constitution, I meant including the bylaws as well. Like making the 55 pages long. Sorry, like I misspoke in that interview. But there's a lot of confusion, I guess, or just a lot of students don't necessarily know like what is in the WSGA Constitution and bylaws. So really just having the opportunity to sit down and take a long look at our Constitution and our bylaws, and really just making sure that everything in those documents are like intentional, and that there's kind of like no mismatches in it, and that like we do get a good look if we were to be elected as president and vice president.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dam. This next question is for Vice President Mikkelsen and Senator Rodriguez. Either of you may answer the following question, but only one of you. Vice President Mikkelsen and Senator Rodriguez, your opponents have voiced concern over the length of the Constitution. What is your stance on the Constitution?
So I really think the length of our bylaws that are the main part of the Constitution come down to the idea that there's a lot of turnover in student government from year to year. Senators change a lot, the administration changes a lot. There's not a lot of continuity between the people who are involved. Luckily, we usually do retain 2 or 3 senators who have been around for a long time. But this is a discussion that even came up just recently when we were talking about student initiative grants and development grants. We spent a lot of time discussing how the next administration, how student governments 2 or 3 years from now are going to look at these bylaws. So I don't think the length is an issue. Obviously, with a length that long, sometimes we run into issues where we amended something but didn't make sure that we amended it all the way through because of the length. But I think it's important to have these detailed documents, because if the student government doesn't know the intention of the previous administrations, then there's no way that they can properly carry out the intentions of those administrations.
Thank you, Vice President Mikkelsen.
Can we use our unscripted?
Oh, go right ahead.
I'd also like to point out that the Constitution, one of the biggest things that we're talking about here, and the reason we're it's so important to us, is that we want to make sure that we're following it. So when Jack talks about the length of it, it's because we read through it, I don't even know how many times, even just through this campaign, just making sure that we're following it in any way possible. That's why tonight, even at Senate, we are making a constitutional reform, our bylaw reform, to make sure that it's continuous. So what we noticed through our administration, or through this campaign, is that we saw some errors in it, and that when even the petitions that we were filling out, there was errors in that from what our Constitution said. And so what we want to make sure is happening is that we're following it. So if we have something, the length of what we have it, that we're following every single line in it, and that's important. And so that's one thing we want to make sure that we're doing throughout our administration as well.
Thank you, Senator Martinez.
This is for Senator Martinez. Senator Martinez, you discussed restarting the Presidential Roundtable as an all-student leader meeting once a month. According to history, the Presidential Roundtable has previously existed and failed in both participation and effectiveness. How can you ensure that all student leaders meeting will not have the same problem, and will you organize and fit, how will you organize and fit 100 students into one meeting?
Yeah, and so what we would see here with the President's Roundtable is it's an opportunity. And so if we're bringing more students to the table, that's huge in our administration. That's what we want to make sure is happening. So the reason we want to do that is so we bring presidents from around the organization so they're able to talk about things. We see some great success within the Greek organizations when they're doing that. They're having those conversations. The other Greek organizations know what's going on in the other chapters because they've had those conversations through roundtables on a bi-weekly basis. So what we want to make sure is happening with the meetings for the presidents is that if there's somebody that wants to start a voter registration drive here on our campus, that's something that Jack and I have worked a lot with, is that we get other student organizations involved in it. So we actually were able to do that through having conversations. So we saw great success in that, and we want to continue those efforts through our administration in WSGA. So that's why we see that President's Roundtable as being so important. And then another thing is that we ran into is some of the student organizations are smaller than some of the large ones. So we see small organizations and large organizations, if they're able to work together and say, hey, these are some of our problems that this is what's going on, they're able to talk about that. And if student organizations are able to communicate what's going on to each other, and they might feel like, hey, I'm not the only one with this problem. What do you mean your student org isn't able to get these students engaged in this or this and this? This is what we've done to help that. And so if more students are able to communicate through bringing back the President's Roundtable, we see that as great success.
So again, to answer the question, how will you fit over 100 students into one meeting?
Yeah, and so another thing that we've looked at is figuring out if one time will actually be what's accurate for our students. So when we see a lot of student organizations, some of them meet at different times because of their schedules. And so what we might look at as an alternative is having a time when students can come maybe in the middle of the day as well as at night, just to give them an option to have those conversations at different times. Because what we've run into is some of our non-traditional students, it isn't easy for them to come during the day or vice versa. So we see that as an alternative for that as well.
Thank you.
So with there being over 100 students, and I feel like a lot of us know that the ESSA that are involved are already overly involved, do you feel like this could potentially stress students out more or add any sort of extra pressure, another thing in their day?
Yeah.
How would you handle that? And how would you make sure that they're prioritizing that time to come to those meetings?
Yeah, so what we see is we do see a lot of students that are involved in a lot of different things, but what we see is that the student organizations would benefit by this. So a lot of our student organizations are just trying to figure out how things work, or they're trying to figure out little glitches that they have in their student organizations. And so this would be an opportunity for them to talk about that with other students, and I think that they would see great benefit in it, and so this would be something they would want to prioritize. Also, this would be an opportunity for maybe a new member. It wouldn't even have to be the presidents, it would just be somebody that's representing that student organization. So we call it a President's Roundtable because that is an opportunity for the presidents, but what we could see is maybe someone that's a little newer to the organization, if the president doesn't necessarily have time, being able to be at these meetings. So someone is representing those student orgs, and they're able to have those conversations.
Thank you.
This question is for Vice President Mikkelsen. Vice President Mikkelsen, you said bringing open source textbooks to campus would cut student costs, but do you have any specific backing to the quality of these open source textbooks as opposed to current textbooks?
Absolutely. So I was actually just meeting with Dean Barron today about open access, open source textbooks. To address the student cost part that you mentioned right there, just so everyone knows, since 2002, textbooks have raised 87% in prices, so it's one of the greatest costs that college students face today. As far as the quality, all these books are peer reviewed, and what that means is that people who are experts in these fields are looking at these textbooks and making sure that they are quality material. Obviously, we're also going to let the faculty who get to decide what textbooks we use here on campus to review the material that they're about to utilize. They don't just come with textbooks, they also include the test, everything that you usually get with the access code, all those things come with them. So I want to sit down with faculty, especially when we start getting more textbooks. They're looking to offer 13 more over the next 5 years. I want to sit down with faculty and really have them review the material to make sure it's up to their standards. That way we make sure the students are getting the best education for the best value.
So to follow up, would faculty and teachers teaching these classes that would use these textbooks be required then to use these textbooks?
We are not looking to require faculty. We're looking to come to faculty and say, this is a great opportunity for students to save some money, and we're looking to bring this opportunity to the faculty. I think if a lot of them see the quality that comes in these textbooks, and they realize what an impact it will have on students, especially with over 1/3 of our student population receiving federal Pell Grants or a very low income student base, when they know how much this can benefit the students, and they see the quality of these textbooks, I think that through meetings, we can get them to agree to use these textbooks.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
To follow up on that, Vice President Mikkelsen, I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
You've previously mentioned that the open source textbooks have been used at Rice University before, and you'd like to use that as the example for which Washburn could follow. Although Rice University is comparable to Washburn in size, I believe it's a difference of 700 students.
That's correct, yes.
Are they comparable in funding? I do know that Rice University is private and Washburn is public.
So that is true, they are private versus public university, but really what I see here is cost is not the issue, or funding is not the issue. These open access textbooks are free for the university to use through creative copywriting, which essentially gives people the right to use their information as long as they give credit to the authors. So I don't think funding is the real issue, I think saving students money. That's what student government's here to do, is make everyone's experience as best as it can be and help retain students the best we can. So anything to save students money will keep students here on campus longer and will also encourage them to take classes that they may otherwise avoid, knowing that it's textbook heavy and that those textbooks are expensive for them.
Thank you, Vice President Mikkelsen.
Okay, and this next question is for Mr. Van Dam. With no previous experience in WSGA, can you talk about some transferable skills that you have that would make up for the lack of experience?
Yeah, over the past about 3 years here at Washburn, I've had the opportunity really to have quite a bit of leadership opportunities here on campus. I am a leadership minor in the Leadership Institute is absolutely awesome. So we're able to learn leadership traits and development in class, but we're also able to apply those throughout the school year as well. So I've been on the Leadership Institute Student Leadership Council the past 3 years I've been here at Washburn. And also being able to be an RA here on campus as well. The leadership that comes with that position is immense. Every single time we walk down the hall or in the union, we live in a bubble. So every single thing that we do, you are constantly being judged for it, whether it be positively or negatively. So I think that really does follow me very well to be the next vice president as well, because being in the administration next year, you would be living in a bubble as well. And no matter what you do, you're going to be judged either positively or negatively in what you do. So I've really had the opportunity to have a lot of leadership positions and grow immensely from those over the past time I've been here at Washburn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Rodriguez, you said you wanted to create a culture change here at Washburn. What part of Washburn culture do you see needs changing?
What I mean by a culture change is that we want to increase inclusivity on campus. So we want to do that by addressing issues like sexual assault. So while we don't necessarily want to target bad areas of campus, we want to overall improve campus so that students can have a more favorable experience. So we want to do that by having programming like bystander intervention training. So this is not currently something that we have open to students, and that's what we want to bring to campus. We think this will help to address issues like drinking, drugs, and especially issues like sexual assault. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and this next question is for Vice President Mikkelsen. What have you accomplished as Vice President that you believe would make you an effective president?
I think I've accomplished quite a lot as vice president. Like I mentioned earlier, I brought back the iConnect program, something that had fallen to the side. President Porter and I have actually made quite a few strides towards the smoking policy on campus, making sure that what the students have expressed over the past 7 years is actually being put into action finally. I've also done things like address student concerns about planners. Everyone kind of agreed that they were a little too small, so next year you'll actually see larger planners here on campus. I think all these things kind of show that I'm addressing student concerns, as well as I know where we stand on several issues, such as lighting on campus, which is an ongoing problem. Not having enough emergency beacons here on campus, which has been an ongoing problem. I know where we're at, so I don't have to look and see where we need to pick up from. And I also have built a relationship with the administration, so they know where I stand on a lot of issues. They know how passionate I am about a lot of issues, and that really gives me a benefit when I go to meet with them, because they know how serious I'm going to be in these meetings about the issues that affect the students on campus.
Thank you. And this next one's for Senator Rodriguez. As Campus Affairs Chairwoman, what are some of your major accomplishments over the past year that qualify you for Vice President?
Okay, so I think one of the best things we've done is we worked on the sexual assault task force in the fall. So this was a really great opportunity to work with a lot of other organizations around campus. We got to partner with STAND a lot, and we got to really see how we can bring organizations together to address this issue, and especially that's going to be beneficial next year as we look to have a larger stance on sexual assault. Another thing that we've been working on ongoing is the issue of lighting. This is something that the Campus Affairs Committee has been looking into and surveying for the last 2 years, and it's something that we're really pushing for now. So we've found that there is room for improvement very soon, and that's something that has taken a lot of time and effort, a lot of meetings as well. Thank you.
This next question is for Senator Martinez. Senator Martinez, what are some of your major accomplishments in WSGA as a senator that qualify you for the presidency?
Yeah, so I think some of my major accomplishments have just been talking to students. So when I'm in any student organization, that I'm having conversations about what we're talking about in WSGA. I think that that's a huge accomplishment because if you are talking about what's going on in WSGA, you're able to talk about things that are addressing student concerns. So when we're bringing something to WSGA, if I know we're going to have it beforehand, then I'm talking to students about what's going on. Also, one of the things that is really important is that I'm able to get students engaged in what's going on. And so I've been working with students, telling them about what's going on in WSGA, having those conversations. And then I would also say, just being in WSGA, I worked on the Student Initiative Grant policy, and that's able, now we have a policy. Now students can look at it, even though it's not updated on the website, now students are able to see that there is a policy and there's something to go off of when they come and ask for grant money, and they can see that there's some policies that will help them and that we're going to work with them through the process as well as the student development grant. So both of those policies were things I did without getting paid. So as a senator, I'm not getting paid to do any of this work. I'm doing this because I love Washburn and I can see the change that we're able to make. And so working on a lot of these things are what's made my success in WSGA great.
Thank you, Senator Martinez. This next question is for Mr. Van Dam. Mr. Van Dam, you advocated for increasing lighting on campus, but the Crane Observatory has heavily protested increased lighting on campus, as lighting pollution can disrupt their activities. What kind of compromise can you propose to the Crane Observatory to address this issue?
Honestly, that just would be a conversation that we would have to have, like with the observatory and like the science department, and really like both like respecting like their program and what they're really trying to do, but also keeping student safety in mind as well. Like you just like heard our opponents say, I mean that is something that their administration is heavily advocating for, as well as like increasing our like improving lighting on campus. I mean, so that would be a situation that both sides would really have to deal with. However, I mean, like you constantly hear from a lot of students that we talk to that lighting is like a top priority in order to feel, like for students to continue to feel safe here on campus.
So follow up, just to clarify, do you think that lighting actually affects the sexual assault rates at Washburn?
What I was just saying there is, so like with a lot of students that we've talked to over the past couple of weeks campaigning, like lighting, students do want to see improved lighting on campus to like help increase like our safety here on campus. So having more lighting on campus, I would say would not hurt that whatsoever.
Thank you. This question is for Senator Rodriguez. You said you want to work with a sexual assault grant coordinator. What plans do you have to combat sexual assault that you're bringing to her?
Yeah, so the idea that we're bringing is the idea of having bystander intervention training. Right now, this is what we most want to be open to students. So we'd like to work with her and see what ideas she has, what potential she has, what potential she sees to get this done as quickly as possible. But bystander intervention training is the biggest idea that we have to bring to them.
Okay, thank you.
This next question is for Mr. Van Dam. Mr. Van Dam, you said you want to create better pathways for students, including one that runs to the KTWU building and the village. How would you potentially fund this additional sidewalk and additional lighting?
It just would be just like even like just like continuous conversations like with our university administration. So like as an RA and just like continuously like walking like from the village to the LLC and back, a lot of students do just walk down Jewel. And that is a safety concern because, I mean, during the day and even at night, students just like walk down the street because there is really no continuous path that goes like from the LLC Union area down to the village. So being able to like have conversations with the university administration and helping them see that, hey, this is an actual safety concern on campus and that a lot of our students are like affected by this lack of like continuous like sidewalk that goes down like along that side of the street that, you know, like Zeta, Alpha Phi, KTWU, the village, and that LLC, Keeney and West, like they're on. There's so many buildings like on that part like of campus. Being able to have like a safe and accessible pathway down to those buildings is like a concern of ours.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dam. This next question is for Senator Martinez. Senator Martinez, you mentioned what a big role Greek life plays in your life. You made the claim that you would best represent the Greek community as you are the only candidate in Greek life. How would you convince students that you wouldn't grant special privileges to the Greek community?
Yeah, and so that was huge. When I was looking at running, I think the best thing about being Greek is that I understand what it means, and that is the values. So being Greek doesn't mean that I'm going to give special privileges to anyone, but what it does mean is that I understand what we value. And for Alpha Phi, that's 6 core values. And I think that loyalty is one of the biggest ones. And so what we see here is that my loyalty to Washburn is huge. The loyalty and compassion that I have towards what's going on here and the changes that we can make is what will make me, and what makes it so important for me to be a Greek community member, because I have those values that I stand for. And so also along with that, I have Jack here right beside me that isn't even involved in Greek life, but that brings a unique perspective to both of us. And so what we see is that just because I'm Greek, that doesn't mean I'm going to give special privileges. It just gives me an opportunity to share my values.
Thank you, Senator Martinez.
Okay, this is going to be a question for both candidates, but I am going to ask Natasha first. What is your 2-minute pitch to recruit a student to Washburn?
My 2-minute pitch to recruit a student to Washburn.
Yes.
Oh, this is an opportunity. No. So my 2-minute speech would honestly be, so if you want to go to Washburn, this is an opportunity for you to share your opinions in so many ways. This is an opportunity for you to talk about Washburn as a large university field, but you have all the opportunities of a large university, but you're here and you're able to talk to your professors, you're able to have a conversation with them, you're able to meet faculty that are going to be mentors for you for life. You're able to talk to students because you're involved in so many things that give you opportunities to reach out to. Opportunities that might be like the League of Women Voters. You're able to have so many unique experiences that only you get created at Washburn. So if I could say one thing is that Washburn gives you the opportunity to bleed Yale blue in so many ways. So I would only encourage students to come to Washburn because it's the opportunity that you will never forget.
Thank you. I did want to mention that this was a question off of Twitter from Blake Porter. so thank you, Blake. And now Vice President Mikkelsen.
So I think more than anything, the thing I would stress to them, I usually get a whole hour on a tour to convince them to come to Washburn, so 2 minutes might be a little rough. But I would stress to them just how important they are to everyone here on campus. When I came to campus, I was actually convinced to come to Washburn because the professor not only walked me from psychology to the business school, but he sat out there with my mom for an hour waiting for me to come out just to make sure that I had the best experience possible here at Washburn. That really, truly just identifies the greatest thing about Washburn. Every faculty member here cares about who you are. You're never going to be sitting in a lecture hall of 200, 300 people. You're going to get the education that you deserve, the best education, I would argue, in the state of Kansas, as well as you're also going to get the opportunity to get involved straight off the bat. You can see this from my own personal experiences. I came in as a freshman and got elected to vice president that very year. There's so many different opportunities for you not just to get involved, but to become a leader and become a better person here on campus. There's also opportunities if you don't see something that you like you don't see like the Quidditch Club, which I know is something that was started this year. We have those opportunities for students to start those organizations. All it takes is 7 students and a faculty advisor, and we help fund those through student government. So I think we give students so many opportunities to better themselves in every angle, education-wise, become a better person, as well as also just become a better leader for society.
Thank you.
This next question is for Senator Martinez. Senator Martinez, You said that you have your stance on guns on campus, but that you haven't adequately heard from the students about their stances. But as president, you would need to take stances. What is your stance regarding guns on campus?
Yeah, so one of the things the reason I make that statement is because we need to be listening to students and what they have to say. So yes, politically I do have my stance, and that is that student safety comes first. So what we see is that right now, guns are expected to be on campus. So what are we going to do to address those concerns that students do have in a lot of ways? So whether that be that we advocate for ways that we can keep students safe, we advocate for ways that students feel comfortable, and we advocate for ways for students to, maybe the students that don't feel safe, with that they're able to come to us and say, here's our concerns and this is what we want to do about it. So with my stance, I want to make sure that through our administration that we're addressing how we will act when guns do come on campus or when they're expected to come on campus. And if that means we're already doing proactive planning to make sure that they don't, then that's what we're able to do. But ultimately, we're looking at what is going to happen when that happens, and what we will do to plan beforehand to make our students feel safe.
A follow-up to that.
Yes.
Is there anything specific, any kind of a specific plan that you have to try and alleviate or ease the process when guns do come on campus, as you say?
Yeah, so what we need most importantly is an education of what happens. For that, if students are worried about guns being in the classroom, how can we educate them to what happens if someone does have a gun in the classroom that's sitting beside them, as well as if you are the person carrying the gun in the classroom, and how you make someone else that's sitting beside you feel safe as well. Because ultimately a lot of the concern that we see, the reason people feel that guns should be on campus is so they can protect others. And so what we want to make sure is happening is that if they're able to do that, that they're protecting others and themselves. And so what we want to make sure is that education is the most important plan at that. And we've already been having conversations about what that would look like, the exact plans, and how that would really look.
Thank you, Senator Martinez.
This question is for Mr. Brenden. The Offices of Admissions and Enrollment Management work diligently to get students to Washburn and to have the best Washburn experience. What additionally, as you have mentioned in your platform, would you do to enhance those experiences, that ideas that you could bring to them?
Yeah, I mean, so like with, so like whether you're a transfer student or you're a student like direct from high school, we want to be able to work with all those offices like on campus that you just mentioned and create like a seamless transition from like the moment you get your acceptance letter like in the mail to like this day like you get here for your new student orientation to like the day like you move in like here on campus. So what we really want to do is be able to work with each and every office and be able to examine what we're currently doing and see like look at ways to improve like getting students super excited before they even step here on campus. And like as as students who've both been summer orientation counselors, that's like what we live and absolutely love doing each and every day, like 10 times like a summer during the summer. So really like getting students super excited with their acceptance letter, then like have them have an absolutely amazing time here when they're here for their NSO, then like the time they like get here and move in, then also like once they move in and get settled in their classes, be able to like work with campus activities board, student activities in Greek life, and really ensure that each and every student does have a place here at Washburn that they do feel comfortable and a part of our university.
Sorry, just from being a part of all of those experiences with you guys personally, I feel like Washburn so far has done the best job of doing that. So are there any new ideas that you guys want to see brought to the table to make sure that that's enhanced?
Yeah, I mean, so we actually just like had a meeting with like James Barklow today to really like look at like what we're currently doing and ways that we can like even like improve upon them. So one concern that we've got from like a lot of students so far is kind of like how we deal with like our transfer students here. Like from some transfer students like here on campus that we've had conversations with, once they get here to campus, they don't really feel like they are really like adequately shown kind of like what like services like we have here to offer on campus, and just really being able to introduce them to what Washburn is all about. So specifically like what we would do like with transfer students is we would work with like McKinley Harkavy with new student orientation and like with James Barklow from the Center for Student Success, and really ensure that like no matter who you are, where you come from, you can be successful here at Washburn.
Thank you. the mic away from me. This next question is for Senator Martinez. You have mentioned multiple times you want to start conversations with students. What would these conversations specifically be intended to do? Would they be started by specifically addressing a certain incident, or would they be started arbitrarily?
Yeah, and so what we would do is kind of continue what we're doing with a lot of the courageous conversations, what we're continuing to do with the Big Block of Cheese Day. But ultimately what we would continue to do is have those conversations. So the guns being on campus, that would be a concern that we're talking to students more about, figuring out what would make them feel more safe and how we could do that. So that would just be one of them. The smoking policy, before we are making even greater changes with the smoking policy, that we're talking to students and making sure that's what they want. Because that was kind of done through a couple administrations ago, but students haven't really been a part of the conversation this year specifically. So those are just some starting conversations. Also just how we can get them more engaged. I think a lot of the problem that we see is we have the same students that are getting engaged in a lot of things, and we all, as those students, love that. But what we can do is make sure that we're getting even more students engaged. And so what we see is that we'll be trying to have conversations like, we've already looked at an idea of going out to the parking lot and giving away something, or just having conversations with students. So they say like, hey, there's WSGA, they're out in the parking lot handing out something cool, or maybe just having conversations so they know what's going on, and just like being comfortable talking to us, and that's a good start.
Thank you.
Yep.
This question is for Vice President Mikkelsen. You mentioned having a t-shirt exchange as a way to increase school spirit. Considering Washburn students already get quite a few t-shirts, what would be the benefit of an additional t-shirt, or what would that symbolic interaction mean to students in order to increase school spirit?
Yeah, of course. So the main thing that I see a lot when I'm giving tours is that we run into people wearing like ESU shirts or Fort Hays State University t-shirts. And when you're walking around with a student you're trying to convince to come to Washburn University, the most discouraging thing they can see is another university's t-shirt. So this works kind of twofold. One, it gets those t-shirts into our hands as opposed to on the backs of the students. But also with the I've been wooed, it's very easily to identify and point out as an ambassador, be like, this is someone who traded in a different t-shirt, no matter what the saying may be, whether they like woo puns as much as I do or not. But it's easy to identify and say, they traded in their other university t-shirt for a Washburn University t-shirt. That's why they care this much about Washburn, that they were looking for an opportunity to get more Washburn into their wardrobe.
Thank you.
Okay, this next question is for Senator Martinez. You have said you want to bring more people to the table in regards to conversations regarding Washburn. How would you plan to motivate students outside of WSGA to come to the table?
Yeah, and so I kind of shared that a little bit with the parking lot situation. But what we see sometimes at Washburn is we see those things as summer orientation counselors or different organizations. We call those sometimes class parking lot students. So that's where I think my idea really sparked upon, and the fact that what if we're reaching out to those students that are in the parking lot? So we're engaging with them in the parking lot, having those conversations with them initially, so they're not leaving and just going from class and then going to that parking lot, that we say, hey, there's an event going on. Here's a lot of the CAB events, they've been giving away fun stuff that goes with that. So, but here's something that's going on tonight. I'd love to see you come back. So we're engaging in those conversations to get them to other conversations. Because initially we have to get those students involved in some way, whether that be talking to them about starting a new student organization even. Whatever that is, if we're getting those students before they leave campus, then we're engaging those students, and that's really important.
Thank you.
Okay, so this next question is a student-submitted question via Twitter from Travis Thayer. It's directed at Vice President Mikkelsen. Vice President Mikkelsen, if one of your major concerns is lighting, why haven't you taken the past year as Vice President to impact this issue?
We actually absolutely have been trying to impact this issue for the past year. Nikki has had countless numbers of meetings about this. She actually just had another one this past Tuesday. This is the thing that we're seeing here, though, is it's an ongoing process. It's not a one and done, like students want lighting, so it's just going to pop up. It's something you have to work with a multitude of different administration, whether that be from facilities, whether that be Dr. Farley, Dr. Ollinger, and just making sure everyone understands. Dean Behrman has even come to the table to talk about these issues, saying that outside of maybe is one of the biggest concern zones we have. So really this comes down to the fact that we're trying to make sure that everyone's involved, as well as we're coming up with the best solution for students, not just a quick fix-it-now solution that may not benefit students in the long run.
Thank you, Vice President Mikkelsen.
Okay. This next question is again for Senator Martinez. You have encouraged enforcement of the smoking ban, but also advocated that you want to hear students' opinions on whether or not to change that. There was already a student survey conducted through the White McAfee administration that led to this ban policy. What are you going to do differently than the White McAfee administration did to gather student responses?
Yeah, I was actually a senator when we were getting surveys, we were having conversations with students, but what we see now is that faculty are kind of seeing a different perspective. They're really advocating for just places on campus for students to be able to smoke or faculty members to be able to smoke. So what we need to do is have more conversations, because now students are coming up to us, even running against the administration and just saying, hey, this is what's going on. I don't really feel like I get it. I think that would be a good option. And so now that we've kind of seen some faculty feedback and we've seen other feedback, to maybe continue those conversations a little bit more. Because right now, we want to make sure that we're having once we have the policy, that we're still talking to students, because we can write up this policy and these ideas, but if we're not talking to more students about what we're doing, then we're not continuing the efforts of what the White McAfee administration really wanted to do.
Appropriate response from you?
All right, so I think it's really important for students to know it wasn't just the first survey that we had passed out from White McAfee. Snow had also done surveys. These started all the way back with President Romero, which was almost 7 years ago, I believe, at this point. But these conversations are being had. So we got the students' input multiple times, and multiple times the students came back and said, we would like a smoking ban on campus. So that is what we're putting forward. But the great thing about this campus is that there's not just one organization that's representing faculty, staff, and students. They each have their own organization. So currently, Blakey and I are in talks with faculty. We're in talks with staff council, with administration, working towards a policy that works for everyone. And this is not going to be a policy, just to be clear, that is just going to be put in place and there's going to be no more feedback. We're going to first take this policy out to the students through open forums, opportunities like that will allow students to give their feedback, as well as allow for faculty and staff to give their feedback. So I don't want the idea that this may be something that is just put in place and then not reevaluated is what's going on. We're really looking to make sure we get input from every single person that is affected by this policy on campus.
I have a follow-up for Senator Martinez. So what would you do differently than the Porter-Mikkelsen administration to work with faculty? And how would you make it a priority to advocate for students, considering this is the Washburn Student Government Association?
Yeah, so when we're working with faculty, I think it's important to engage the senators. So one of the things that we really want to make sure that we're doing is that if senators are coming to us and saying, hey, I have a relationship with this faculty member and you're trying to have a conversation with them, and maybe you have had very little conversations with them. So I would love to talk to them. They're someone that I'm really close to, as well as just one of the things that was being talked about is that they've already been having these conversations through the administration, but as a senator, we're not informed of that sometimes. And so it's really important that we're informing our senators, informing the exec staff when things are going on, so then we all know what's going on, so we're all on the same page. So we're not sitting up here saying, hey, we'd love to have initial conversations before this is implemented, because we already know that that's what's going on.
Thank you. And I have a question for Senator Martinez. According to current university policy, smoking is prohibited within 10 feet of any building entrance and exit or air handling unit. What would you propose be done to enforce this policy that isn't already being enforced?
Right. This was a conversation that we would want to continue with Captain Enos, people that actually are going to be implementing this policy. And so that's one thing that when we sat down and talked, we said, how about we set up a bi-weekly meeting if we were to be in the administration, so we could have those conversations on a real basis, because students are coming to us with this concern and he's saying, hey, students aren't coming to me with this concern as likely as much as they're coming to you. So we'd love to continue those conversations. So doing that as well is really important.
Okay, and as follow-up, previous people involved in this conversation have said that enforcing this policy requires more staff. who would fund this staff, or how would you convince the current university administration to prioritize the funding of the staff over other things?
So I think what we see is, I don't necessarily think that we need to make sure that we're looking at this on a new page. So when we're talking to them about what's important to our students, that we're balancing those out. So if students feel that the smoking policy needs to be implemented more, that we're having those conversations with who it would be implemented by before we make a decision.
Okay, thank you.
This next question is for Vice President Mikkelsen. Vice President Mikkelsen, your opponents have claimed that WSGA has not been abiding by the Constitution. A specific example given being that the minutes of the Senate meetings have not been posted in the appropriate time frame. Are these accurate claims, and if so, why has this been happening?
So we have recently had issues posting minutes to it, but up until winter break, we were actually getting them up every week. We've encountered problems with putting things on IT, and the real issue comes down to is when we reach out to IT, they're currently understaffed. They're actually 11 people down right now. So trying to get a hold of them and making sure that we can properly implement these things, because it's a very technical thing to get something from a piece of paper onto a website. So working with IT has really been our biggest issue, not that they're an issue, just that they don't have enough staff to address our concerns. So right now, we're just making sure we're trying to get them up as quickly as possible. We are absolutely concerned with following everything in the Constitution. It's just a matter of the ability to get those things on the website right now.
As a follow-up to that, is there any assistance to the IT department you would advocate for, and if so, how would you do this?
So I think I could definitely advocate for more people being hired by IT. I know with them, there's a lot of specialized people because of budget cuts. They cut people, so they get people with very specific skill sets. And when those people leave, it's very hard to replace that exact skill set. I would definitely advocate for IT getting more, but the issue currently, along with every other issue on campus right now, seems to relate to the fact that there have been lots of budget cuts. And that's not because of Washburn. For those of you who don't know, we actually just getting another 3% budget cut from the state. So I think pushing just to make sure that we're accepting, we're understanding of the issues that they're facing and working as much with them. That way we don't put more stress on them demanding that they get these things done immediately, and just understanding that they will get to them as soon as humanly possible.
Thank you, Vice President Mikkelsen.
You can just keep the mic,
Okay.
I'm going to ask another question. Attention has been brought to the issue of multiple open Senate seats in WSGA this year and in the past. Why have these not been filled in your current administration, and is there anything you would implement to fill these seats?
So absolutely, we actually do push for senators to go out and talk to other senators. We've had 3 apply recently, 2 before announcements happened, and then another one just recently from Senator Smith, who brought in one of his friends to apply. This is an issue that they faced for multiple years. I actually went back 5 years to look at the rosters of the Senate towards the end of the year, and what we see a lot is a huge drop-off right after winter break. Whether this because people have a night class that they have to do, or their schedule gets shifted so they have to work. So I think really pushing to make sure that we advocate and push for people to sign up for open Senate seats right after winter break, and being aware that this is an issue that we face almost every year. But I think President Porter and I have done a really great job in trying to push the senators. We do things like ask senators to recommend one person, and then we have our chief of staff reach out to that person. So I think continuing programs like that where we get known people to bring us other names, and also pushing for the senators to bring in their friends and colleagues, and even people that they may not know very well that they know are passionate about issues on campus.
Thank you.
This next question is once again for you, Vice President
Okay.
Mikkelsen. Vice President Mikkelsen, what would you do as president to differentiate your administration from President Porter's, a platform you ran on last year, or would it be similar?
I think you can see from what we've been talking about that it is different. There are things that President Porter and I brought in, like the open forums with courageous conversations, and as we called it, the big block of cheese day. Building on those things is going to be very important because we saw a lot of success with those. But you can see the new ideas we're bringing already. Open access, open source textbooks is a huge idea. The Spirit Exchange is a very different idea than anything President Porter and I did during our administration. So I think you can see from the ideas I'm presenting now that I'm going to continue the things that were successful, not just from our administration, but from every administration in the past, as well as bring these new ideas that we've been discussing throughout tonight and throughout this campaign.
Thank you, Vice President Mikkelsen. Ladies and gentlemen, the following questions are our segment where we will ask both candidates from both parties to answer these questions. All right. To reiterate the rules for these, for both questions. You will get 2 minutes to answer, each of you. All right. And you can defer to your VP candidate, or whichever one of you would prefer to answer the question. Okay.
Can I clarify, does one person need to answer the full question? Or can we?
I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
Unless you have something specifically that you would like to reference them for.
Okay, thank you.
So the first question is, conversations only go so far. What impacts have you personally seen come from the courageous conversations? We'll start with Mikkelsen Rodriguez.
So the impacts we're seeing, we actually just had the kind of wrap up of the conversations to see where we're going to go from here. The big thing that we want to do is implement a strategic plan, not just from the students, but from administration as well, and really get their backing behind this. I think, like you said, conversations only go so far. So taking all the issues that we heard, bringing them to administration's attention, and planning out what exactly we're going to do to address issues like diversity and accessibility on campus. But I would also reiterate that it is very important to continue the conversations. So it's going to be an ongoing process. We will have the issues that we just had, but next year we're going to continue and push to make sure we're addressing new issues that may crop up for students.
Yes, no, I wholeheartedly agree with what Vice President Mikkelsen just said in continue the conversations that we just had. Like this past week, I've had a meeting with Shelly Bierman, who's the sexual assault grant coordinator. And we were just talking about, just issues that she sees, on our campus from like the wide variety of places that she had worked at. And one thing that we both saw, like right off the bat was, we have our new student orientation and it's like a full day long process and each and every student feels like, hey, like I can come to Washburn and be successful. But one thing with like our faculty, our new faculty orientation is they don't really get any like sexual assault training like in that like training. So what we really want to work on is, because we do have a lot of adjunct professors on our campus, so if someone were to go report like a sexual assault or an encounter of domestic violence, that we want those students to have a good experience, like being able to feel like that we're listened to and that it was dealt with like correctly. So just like continuing to have conversations with Shelly Bierman and other offices on campus to ensure that every single thing that we do regarding what is brought up in the crucial conversations that Natasha and I both attend is like a top priority to our administration.
Okay, and you guys have kind of hit on this just a little bit, but what steps have you taken as someone in a position of power and representing the students to help stop sexual assault or support victims? And this one we'll start with Martinez and Brenden.
So I think the best thing that I've done in a leadership position is I've had conversations with students that have been in this situation. And I think that having a conversation and making other students feel comfortable when we're talking about such crucial issues is really, really important. So when I've had conversations and we've went on with those conversations through working with student organizations such as STAND, and making sure that students feel comfortable when they are in that situation is most important for our administration. So continuing those conversations in leadership roles, it has been very important to me, and that students are able, that's where we got the Say Anything box. Some of those Say Anything box ideas is because if students aren't able to talk to somebody about it, that they're able to share that anonymously. Because sometimes, like one of the things that is really important is that when we bring that new position on campus, or we're looking at it, like the victim advocates, so that some people don't want to be called victims. Having those conversations is really, really important to make students feel comfortable.
Thank you. And Mikkelsen Rodriguez.
So the current administration actually started the Sexual Assault Task Force. This was a really big step in saying that we wanted to address the issue of sexual assault on campus. My committee, the Campus Affairs Committee, got to work very closely with the Sexual Assault Task Force, and we got to work on issues like the It's On Us pledge, which was an opportunity for students to pledge that they wanted to fight sexual assault and that they were against it. We also had the Light the Night walk here on our campus, and that's something my committee got to work on as well. We are continuing to try to work with organizations to see how we can create programming and work to address that issue.
Thank you.
Vice President Mikkelsen, you have marketed your platform on the themes advocate, stimulate, and innovate. Senator Martinez, your platform is built on the themes of voice, engagement, transparency, and community. Vice President Mikkelsen, why did you choose the themes you chose for your platform? And would you consider them more important themes to address than your opponent's themes?
So the reasons I chose these themes, before I even decided to run for president, I really sat down and asked myself what I would want to accomplish as president of student government. And these were the things that popped up straight away to me, whether it be addressing issues that we have for affordability, whether it be addressing sexual assault. So those themes really sprung from the reason I chose to run. And I wouldn't say that anyone up here would think that any of the issues that we're discussing are any more or less important than other issues. I think the way that we're approaching them, and you can see kind of how we want to address them, is the most important issue. And it's up to the students to decide which side they think really approaches the issues in the way that they think is best for the student population here on campus.
Thank you, Vice President Mikkelsen. Senator Martinez, same question.
Yeah, so Jack and I really sat down and looked at things that were important to us. And I would agree with Vice President that most of the things that we're advocating for are somewhat similar, that we feel that students are going to feel is important in the long run. It's just whether or not how we approach them will be differently. And I think that ultimately what we can see is the reason that we went with our 4 words is because we're looking at an overall outlook. What can we do for students to make sure that we can address all of these concerns? So if we come with 4 big ideas, those are great, but ultimately what they are big ideas that have umbrellas with more ideas. And so that's why we chose the words that we chose. So if we can get students engaged, create that community, create that voice that students want, and ultimately create transparency, then that is what's important to students, because what you can see is all the other issues can be involved in that. Because if we're getting the voice out there, we're getting students engaged in what's going on, then they're going to, all those issues are going to be talked about in the long run. So that is why we chose those words.
Thank you, Senator Martinez.
Both parties have made claims to be extremely involved on campus. How can you ensure that you can manage your schedule to maintain effective leadership, but also maintain a strong social presence for students to see? We'll start with.
So one of the things is really important is that I would prioritize. So right now I work over 20 hours for the League of Women Voters. I've already looked at the approach that I'm actually going to have to give that up if I were to be elected into the administration, because my work would actually be here instead. So I've already made those approaches to make sure that I am prioritizing what's important, and that would be Washburn. So a lot of the involvement that I have can be tied into a lot of the things that we're doing in our organization. Alpha Phi, I'm always trying to make things better for our university, and that's why I can see that all the things that I'm involved in are ultimately under the huge umbrella of being WSGA president. So what I can see is that I would be able to prioritize that. Being involved in all of these things, I'm able to maintain a GPA that keeps me either on the Dean's or President's Honor Roll every semester, and maintain the opportunity to be in organizations such as Alpha Lambda Delta because of my GPA. So what I can see is that prioritizing what will be important to me, but also the schedule that I make for myself. So I'm a goal-oriented person, and so if I'm making a schedule, I'm going to accomplish what I say I'm going to accomplish, and that's huge.
I think you can really just look to what I've been doing this year. I don't think anyone in the office from the exec staff would argue that there's anyone who spends more time in that office than myself, than maybe other than President Porter. I spend an incredible amount of time, well over the constitutional requirement, to make sure that I'm getting every single thing done that is under my umbrella as Vice President of Student Government. But I'm definitely going to look to keep the positions I have currently. So I may have to step down from my public relations position with honors, but I'm definitely going to stay involved with the honors program. As well as Student Ambassadors is great because it only is 1 hour tour block a week, and so they're willing to work around my schedule. I think you can really look to my history and see that I've been prioritizing student government, as well as making myself available for all the students that come talk to at any time that they feel the need to. So I would really just direct you to look at what I've done over the next year and see that I'm going to put even more time in based on the platform and the ideas that we're presenting over the year to come. Thank you.
then this is another question from the Twitter scene. This is from Megan Forth. Senator Martinez, why did you step down from WSGA Chairwoman of Student Engagement this year?
Yeah. So I actually had to step down because of my large commitment to the League of Women Voters. I worked a lot with that to make sure that students here on our campus could be registered, as well as throughout the state of Kansas. So me stepping down was just an opportunity for me to be more engaged in the community. And so that was really important to me. It doesn't mean that I looked any differently at WSGA. It just gave me an opportunity to see something different. And in the long run, it gave me an opportunity to create a better environment for voter registration here on our community. We registered over 400 voters. And so that is huge. In the state of Kansas, it's really hard to get registered to vote. And so me stepping down from that position didn't decrease my capability of being involved in WSGA and being engaged in what's going on at all, especially not in the Washburn community. I would say that I was actually more engaged because I was engaged in what was going on in not only the Washburn community, but in the community around Washburn, the Topeka community. And so that's been huge. So me stepping down from that position does not change my capability to be WSGA president at all. It just has given me opportunities to shine in other lights as well.
Thank you. And another question from Megan. This one's for Jack, though. Yeah. So in the past, they had wondered why you had not accepted a Senate seat beforehand, and they want to know what has changed for you to now want to join WSGA.
Yeah, so my freshman and sophomore year, I was on the mock trial team, so that did take, like Nikki totally knows, takes a ton of time, like during the week. But also, during my last couple of years, I've had like quite a bit of night classes that just like happened to be like the classes that just like worked best, like for my schedule. And also, like as an RA, like you totally know that we have like quite a bit of programming to do as well. So it's really just been like a matter of just being able to balance my time and balance my schedule. But I've also like took the time to be kind of like still caught up in like what WSGA does and still like talk with quite a bit of senators and be knowledgeable of what does go on in WSGA.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to that, Mr. Van Dam, from our understanding, current requirements by the Constitution require that if you were to obtain the vice presidency, you would have to resign as an RA. Does this concern you at all?
I don't believe that's not. I haven't seen that requirement at all.
Thank you.
One thing that several students have noticed is that in the videos we took, Martinez and Van Dam's campaign video was 3 times as long as Mikkelsen and Rodriguez's campaign video. What do you think this says about your campaign? Do you think that Martinez and Van Dam are saying too much, or do you think that Rodriguez and Mikkelsen are saying too little?
Is this directed towards us?
Yes.
Okay. So I think the thing it comes down to is Nikki and I have really been pushing this consistent message of what we want to advocate for students. And what we try to do in our video is address it in a way that we know students are very busy. So addressing it as a very matter-of-fact way, telling the students what they need to know about our platform is what we are trying to accomplish out there. Many times in meetings, what usually happens is we express the platform and then people come back with questions. Unfortunately, since it was a video, they weren't able to do that. But I don't think the time constraint for us, I don't think by any means we were saying too little. We expressed everything that we've been expressing to all the students we talked to about what we wish to accomplish, as well as what we've accomplished over the past year.
Thank you.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've done throughout this campaign is not compare ourselves to our opponents, because that's not what this is about. Both of us are here to create change and create what's going to be best for the Washburn community. So comparing the videos, that's not what we're doing at all. Actually, we were just trying to make sure that students were informed as much as possible about what's going on and what we stand for. So our video being long is us being naturally just telling what we want to do in our administration. So just because our video was longer and theirs was shorter doesn't mean anything differently and that they weren't telling points versus us. That's not what that's about actually at all. We were just making sure that students had a platform that they could see what's going on and what we stood for. So if that took us 19 minutes to do, I'm not upset about that at all. I think it just gives us more of an opportunity to tell students about what we are passionate about and see what we're passionate about, because in that video we were just naturally Jack and Natasha, and that's what you would see every single day, and that's what we wanted students to see.
Thank you.
So this is going to be, again, for both of you, but we will start with Martinez this time. I believe is it yours? Yeah, okay. Is there anything in your opponent's platform that is not yours that you would like to implement if you were elected?
Yeah, so what we've already been having is having conversations about some of this stuff. So they're talking a lot about the open source textbooks, but that's already been a conversation that's been had on our campus. So what we want to do is maintain that conversation that's been had in the library. So Dr. Bierman, a lot of the library staff, there's even a librarian that's made for that open source textbook opportunity. And so we would continue that effort through the library's efforts and continue that conversation. So that's been huge. If we would continue something like that, we have looked at different prices and the comparisons of Rice versus Washburn, and we have looked at the differences and the pricing that they've been saying versus what we would actually save. And so honestly, that would be something that would be really important to us because that's already a conversation that's already been had. So a lot of the things that they're talking about are conversations that are going to happen, and whichever administration continues that is what's important.
Thank you. Mikkelsen.
All right, so I think really you see a lot of similarities between our two platforms. I would just more reiterate, rather than taking anything specific from theirs, that we would just continue doing the things that we've been talking about doing. Continuing open forums, continuing courageous conversations. As well as the open access textbook, yes, there are small conversations happening, but without a large student push, the opportunity for students to actually get their hands on a computer that would have this textbook, or get their hands on a print-on-demand option for these textbooks are not going to happen. So I think it's most important that we sit down with Barron. I actually sat down with Dr. Barron earlier today to make sure that he knows that these conversations are coming from the students, not just faculty. So I'd really, more than anything, just focus on building on the things that the past administration, Blake and I, President Porter and I have been working on already, rather than take anything specific from theirs. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have another student-submitted question from Twitter. This is from Bradford DeYoung, directed at Senator Martinez and Jack Van. The platform mainly runs on getting suggestions from the students. What happens when they don't talk?
Yeah, so actually Brad already talked to me a little bit about this. But one of the things is that we're going to be engaging students in so many ways that they're going to have a conversation with us, whether that be initially, maybe they're not talking to us about that conversation, maybe they're talking to us about Washburn life in general. And then we'll get to that point where they're able to talk and hear voices, because ultimately what we found through this campaign is that because we've reached out to so many students that we've been able to have those conversations already. So for us to feel like that's going to be a problem through our administration isn't something we're really worried about at all.
By all means, go ahead.
Yeah, and just like being vice president, I would just continue to be like just the person I am. Like on campus, anytime I see anybody, I really just like stop to talk to them and see how their day's going and see like any possible way I can do, like to help them out in any way possible. And that's just like one of the things that I absolutely love to do, like walking across campus. So like take it a 5-minute walk and make it 15. That's totally cool with me. I just love like stopping by and checking on students and seeing like how everybody's day's going, and like I totally plan to continue to do that as vice president.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dam. Thank you, Senator Martinez. Following question is also a student-submitted question from Alex Lasher. This is a question for both candidates. You may choose whichever one of you prefers to answer. How do you plan on boosting the abysmal retention rate of both freshmen and returning senators?
Is this first?
We'll start with
Sorry. I'm going to lose track of who's
You're
here right now. So addressing first the retention rate of universities overall, one of the biggest contributing factors we see is the rising cost of universities. Open access textbooks, the conversations that Dr. Barron has already been having, revolves almost exclusively around this. Changing something from $300 for a textbook, in which case you might have to buy 3 or 4 textbooks a semester, to offering a free version of that book, lowers costs for students and will keep students around for longer. We also look to build this school spirit through the things like the I've Been Wooed exchange that allow students to express how proud they are to be in Ichabod, because the more you're expressing that, the more involved you're going to get through things like the engagement tracker that we're currently working on under our administration. That's how you're going to get students to stay around on campus. Addressing the senator thing, like I've said before, really when we lose senators is when over winter break when schedules changes and when work changes. So I think encouraging people to realize that we will be flexible with them. There are opportunities for you to be a senator and work more office hours if you're unable to make a semester in the actual Senate, but you don't want to lose your spot. Making sure they understand that these opportunities are available so they can still be involved without necessarily having to give up a class time or work hours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you please restate that question? I think it was 2. Is it 2?
Yes, just
Okay.
one second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Technology. Okay. So, question reiterated from Mr. Lasher. How do you plan on boosting the abysmal retention rate of both freshmen and returning senators?
Perfect. So I think what we're going to do here is address the senator problem that we do have. And that is that we want to make sure that we are increasing senators. So through our campaign, we've already been handing out when we go to student organizations, we hand out a form that says, hey, there's Senate seats are open right now. Here's how you can be elected. Here's what's going on. So through our campaign, we've already been trying to make changes to make sure that the Senate is filled for next year as much as possible. And then continuing those efforts. So when an open Senate seat pops up, that we're filling that as quickly as possible. Through our conversations that we'll be having with students, that we'll be continuing to fill those seats when they do occur. And that we're targeting different groups that aren't necessarily involved at this moment in Senate, that we're making sure that we're getting those students engaged, because that's what's important, is that if we can fill those Senate seats as much as possible, and we're doing that continuously when they're open, and then we're always having a nomination committee. They're ready, already elected, because that's an opportunity for us to get more senators and get more voices to be heard. So to increase that, we want to make it great for students to be on Senate, because this is an opportunity for them to share their opinion and listen to other students on campus. And so that's why we want to make it so important that that students will want to be in Senate. And that retention rate won't be a problem, because we'll continue those efforts. As soon as we lose a seat, then we fill it again. So that's important.
Thank you, Senator Martinez. Thank you, Vice President Mikkelsen and Senator Rodriguez. The next question is also a student-submitted question from Facebook. This one comes to us from Ryan Yao. Where do the candidates stand on the issue of open carry, specifically not concealed carry, gun laws on campus? If open carry is permitted, what actions will be put in place to potentially teach students gun safety? Go ahead. Vice President Mikkelsen, you can begin.
Okay. So open carry is something we really haven't broached, for the main reason that this is not something that's pressing on our door whatsoever. I don't see open carry being something that is allowed on this campus or any campus at Washburn. I think more than anything, education, though, if this ever did happen, I'm not saying that it will, but I think educating people, letting them know about proper gun safety, as well as implementing things that we kind of moved away from in Kansas, whether that be a permit to conceal and carry, pushing for things that require people to be educated on the issues. That way, if nothing else, we know that the people walking around with open carry firearms, or at least know how to turn on the safety and basics like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ryan, our answer is very similar. I mean, like currently under like the state law, like with the exemption expiring, that only does relate to like the conceal and carry. So like what Natasha was previously talking about earlier, like first and foremost, if we were to be like in the administration, we want to be proactive, because I mean, altering like this law that's going to expire that would allow you like to be able to conceal and carry on a college campus would require, I mean, like legislative and gubernatorial like power to overturn that. So I mean, this is like a law that we plan on like being prepared for. So like Vice President Mikkelsen just said, is education is like a key part of that, just like what Natasha was briefly talking about earlier. Making students feel comfortable, like, I mean, because guns will be on campus, so being able to make students feel comfortable like in that setting, and be able to create an environment if students do feel uncomfortable for whatever reason, they're able to like have these open and honest conversations that we can make everyone feel safe here on our campus.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dam.
This is another question submitted from Megan Borth on Twitter. Martinez and Van Dam. How do you address the rumors of your campaign ripping down posters of your opponent?
Our campaign ripping down posters?
That is what is submitted.
Oh, okay. So I'm not really sure where that question is going, honestly. So our campaign has not ripped down anyone's posters. Megan, I don't know where you heard that. I honestly have no idea. So our campaign would not, like I said earlier, our campaign is not about going against Malcolm and Nikki. It's about making a change that we want to make here on our campus. And so that's what we focus on. We focus on getting you guys engaged. We're not here to try to hinder another person's experience in running for WSGA, because Jack and I are both political science majors. We understand the importance of getting as many people to the table and understand as giving everyone that opportunity. So I'm not really sure where that's going. So.
Like to our knowledge, can we ask Megan like a follow-up question to be more specific?
Oh, I got that from someone else in here. They just didn't want to ask it. So I don't know.
So
Posters were torn down in a building.
Okay, that's the first time we've ever heard anything about that. So like if anyone were to do that, we'd be totally 100% against it, because the whole point of this election, whether it be Malcolm and Nikki or whether it be Natasha and I, there's two great candidate groups up here, and that we would in no way hinder Malcolm and Nikki being able to run, because they've done a good job this year, and why would we try to stop them being able to advertise on campus? That just would be silly.
Do you guys have any response to that, Nicholas?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Thank you to both of you.
We have another student submitted question from Facebook. This one comes to us from Ian Fluke. With the current financial situation in Kansas and the recent cuts to education, and seeing that a few programs like mock trial have already been cut, how would the candidates address student concerns about possible cuts to current programs that the university offers for both candidates? We'll begin with Senator Martinez.
So what we would need to do is have more conversations with students. So the WSGA funding would be an opportunity to make a student organization if they're not already at that point, and to have conversations with us, to team up with us and continue the efforts that we want to continue in bringing more people to the table. And that would be really important. So we'd address those concerns by just making sure that they understand what funding is there for us in WSGA and for the student organizations as a whole. And then we overall are going to have to address that concern for a lot of different organizations. So we find that really important in the future for anybody we're bringing to campus as well.
Thank you. Vice President Mikkelsen, Senator Martinez.
So first, I think we would want to advocate to the administration to not cut programs that are essential to students. At the recent Higher Education Day, we actually went to the Capitol and we advocated on behalf of flat funding. So the legislature not reducing our funding, which unfortunately they didn't do. But we would continue efforts like that, advocating for these programs and how important they are to students. But as the Senate, we would also encourage these organizations to find other ways to stay involved. I'm on the mock trial team, and what we're doing in this unfortunate situation of being cut is that we're determined to stay on campus. So we're going to do this by becoming a student organization. So we can receive funding from WSGA in that way. And this is a great way for us to remain as an organization and presence on campus without having to entirely disappear.
Thank you, Senator Rodriguez. Thank you both. At this time, seeing no more student-submitted questions, we are going to move on to our final area of the debate. So to begin this part, we're going to ask that each of you are given the opportunity to ask your opponent a question. We'll begin with Senator Martinez and Jack Van Dam, and then we will go on to Vice President Mikkelsen and Senator Rodriguez.
So this is, I guess, specifically towards Malcolm. So one of the things that's really important to you is creating these opportunities for students, but why have you not been able to do those as VP?
So I would disagree. I absolutely have been able to create changes VP, whether that be from the smoking policy or starting courageous conversations conversations, whether that be from working on the sexual assault task force. I think over the course of this year, President Porter and I have accomplished an incredible amount of things. We've also done things like increase funding for individuals to go on conferences. That was something that had been practiced in the past, but we created an actual line item. That way student government's not just serving student organizations, they're serving individuals as well. So I think looking back at everything that we've accomplished in this past year kind of shows that we have been accomplishing things. And the fact that I have even more things to do is absolutely great in my opinion, because that means that's just more stuff that I can build upon on top of the stuff that I've already been doing.
Thank you, Vice President Mikkelsen. Going forward now, I believe you two are next.
Seeing as how sexual assault, as well as lighting on campus, and even the constitutional reform is a large part of your platform, first thing that President Porter and I actually enacted after swearing in our staff is that we created a sexual assault task force that was open to senators. We also, during that open forum, provided an opportunity for any senator who was interested to tell us that they would be interested in looking into constitutional reform. Campus Affairs also weekly gives the update that they are continuing to work on lighting on campus, and that if anyone is interested, they should come contact them. So seeing as these are all very large issues in your platform, I'm wondering as to why you have not sought out, I can't say the proper word. Sought out. Forgive me for that. It's past my bedtime, everybody. Why have you not sought out these opportunities that have been presented over the past year to really work towards bettering these things?
Yeah. Are you talking towards me?
Yeah, more
okay,
specifically
yeah.
towards you, yes.
So I actually have taken up a lot of these opportunities. So I tried to get on a lot of campus safety. I tried to work on that a little bit through the different committees that they were trying to make. And what I saw is that they were falling out. A lot of them weren't continuing, or I wasn't getting the information because I wasn't on campus affairs. And so I wasn't getting engaged in those as much as I would have liked to. And so what I did instead was continue those conversations with Captain Enos, already starting and continuing those conversations with him, and go on from there and have conversations with students and see what they really want, and go directly to the people that are going to make the change, because that's what I see has been important in the administration as well, is that if I can't get involved in it through WSGA, because sometimes I think that a lot of times we're not as connected in WSGA as senators as we are as if we were in exec staff. And so what I would like to see is that change and that culture really change to where we're all a team and we're all working on the same goals. And so if that was mentioned at the beginning of the year, that it continues being mentioned if they're still working on that as well.
Thank you, Senator Martinez. At this time, we're going to ask for your concluding statements. As a reminder, you have a 2-minute time limit for your closing statement. We'll go first with Vice President Mikkelsen, and also, in addition to that, you can yield your time to your running mate, but only one person can give this closing statement.
Oh, so I can let Nikki speak, but she would be the only one who can speak then? Is that what you're saying?
I think we're gonna change that. We're gonna split it up. You guys can divide. I don't know if that was a misprint or something. That didn't really make sense. So we're gonna split that time up.
I think throughout this debate and also throughout our campaign, what you can see is consistency in our message, as well as the things that we're advocating for, the things that we're trying to innovate and stimulate here on campus are common student concerns that I think just about every student on this campus holds personally. Everything that we do through student government is empowered by the students, whether that be from student votes and student government, all the way down to the fact that you guys fund us through your student activity fee. So I encourage you all to look at how consistent we've been, how much we've really emphasized every issue, and how passionate we've been about every issue on campus. I would also obviously encourage you all to make sure you tell all your friends to vote on March 8th, 9th, and 10th next week, and let them know the things that you've heard if they haven't had the opportunity to come speak to us.
I think overall, our message is really just about uniting Washburn. We realize that students can be involved in organizations, they can have jobs, they can have families, and they can have full course loads, and that they don't always have the time to come to Senate meetings or to even come to student government with their issues. That's why it's really important to us that we meet students where they are. And so our campaign is really about uniting Washburn.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. We'll move on to Senator Martinez and Mr. Brenden.
Yeah, so one of the things that's really important to both Jack and I is making sure that you guys can come to us. And I think that's ultimately where we've found a lot of strength, is that students are going to be able to talk to us because they've already been talking to us about having these conversations with us, and that they're able to talk to us on a normal basis. That we know so many students have come to us with these concerns because they're comfortable talking with us. And they're able to have those conversations, whether that be in the residential halls, whether that be just walking on campus. And I think so most importantly, we're running on big ideas that have really ultimately have an impact on every single student on our campus. And I think that's what we can see, is that our experiences that we've had already at Washburn are so transferable to what we would be doing in these positions that it would give this community a really great opportunity to see some awesome changes that would get you guys engaged and get WSGA in the right path of visibility and making sure that students are able to come to us in so many ways, whether that be through funding requests or whether that be through making policy changes as well.
First and foremost, anytime like you see us talking or you see any campaign material that we do send out, you'll see U shape woo. We want every single person in this room and here at Washburn to be able to shape their experience here at Washburn, no matter what they do or what they're in. And Natasha and I are consistently on campus. I mean, like, one cool thing about us is like we've lived on campus our whole entire time since like the first day we got here, like till now, and it's an absolutely awesome opportunity. I mean, like, to just be like hanging out in the corner store or be like eating breakfast or lunch or dinner in the union, just consistently being here for our students. We want to be accessible, and we want to continue to make WSGA a more visible organization on campus, and really try to take, I mean, here at Washburn, every student has such amazing ideas. So being able to take those ideas and turn them into reality and really get more students into this conversation and bring a more diverse voice to the table.
Thank you, Senator Martinez. Thank you, Mr. Van Dam. This time, I'd like to thank you all for attending. I believe that both parties, all four candidates, have done one heck of a job tonight. Put up a really good debate. I'd like to give them a round of applause real quick.